Ask friend if he knows anyone who had access to some tools I needed to finish a project. Says sure, he knows a guy from work that would be happy to help, apparently he was interested in the same kind of art. But warns me he's a bit off. Drive friend to work one day, he introduces me. Guy seems really distant and withdrawn, shakes my hand and we chat a bit. He seems really interested in the woodwork I was doing, and we talked about sculptures and such for a little while, things we'd learned, tools we used, etc. Guy warms up a bit, and I ask him if it would be alright if I checked out some of his stuff. He hesitantly agrees, kind of like when you're trying to come up with an excuse, but just can't. He tells me to swing by that night, we can chat over a few beers. Okay, sure. Later that night, I get a call, it's the guy, he sounds a little shaken up, says things are chaotic at home, and right now isn't a good time. Says he'll call me sometime. Whatever, sure man. 2 weeks go by. Guy calls one afternoon, says things have settled down, and he wants me to bring over some of my works as well, to compare and blah blah. Sure dude. So I start to head over, and notice this guy lives in the middle of fucking nowhere. I had to call him up just to find his house. It's at the end of a long driveway, beautiful acre plus of land, the driveway is littered with trees, and his house is actually pretty nice. As I come up the driveway, something strikes me odd about the trees I'm passing up, they all have faces carved into them facing the driveway. Twisted, pained faces. I didn't think much of it, I make morbid stuff myself. And in fact I was very impressed, the amount of detail was staggering. Looking out onto the tree line of the property, every tree had pained faces looking in on the house, almost like the woods were watching you wherever you were. This actually kind of creeped me out. Looking out was like seeing 100 or so white faces, just crying out. Kind of like they wanted your attention. Knock on the door, guy answers with a beer in hand, and a much friendlier demeanor than before. Helps me carry some of my stuff in, and he shows me around, guy seems pretty cool. Begin to notice each room has one of those same damned faces hanging above the door frame. The more I saw them, the more I felt sick. Up close the faces were more detailed than I had imagined, almost surrealistic. I asked him what his focus on the faces were for, and the guy kind of tensed up and dodged my question. Upon entering his workshop, which was fucking sweet by the way, he seemed to have other interests besides creepy faces. Entire 7-foot sculptures of women, men, animals, etc. All very well done. And one with a tarp in the back, just chillin' there, he says it isn't done yet, so I don't bother. It was right in front of a door that I think led to another room. We begin working on stuff together, trading stories and times we had accidentally injured ourselves. Suddenly subjects change, guy asks me what I think about God. Tell him I'm not very religious, but I don't rule anything out. Guy starts getting a bit loud, saying that God is a blatant lie, he was told so. By whomst? He kinda silenced for a moment, and then abruptly asked me if I believed in spirits. Gave him kind of the same answer, it's possible. He starts looking around the room, as if seeing if anyone is around, and then his voice goes soft, and he kind of whispers for a moment. I see things in the woods. At dusk I can see their shadows. Sometimes they whisper from the trees, and I can hear them. Fucking nope. Obviously guy is mentally disturbed. Egg him on, ask what they tell him, etc. They tell him that God is a lie, only thing after death is darkness. He says they laugh at him, and leave dead animals at his tree line. officially creeped out at this point. He said for a while they visited him at night, and each face carving represented a different spirit that had visited him. Says that they can't stand looking at themselves in death, so they don't step within the tree line, thus why he has the entire thing carved out. I'm pretty silent at this point. I hadn't had goosebumps so bad since I was a kid. And chills just running up my spine. He told me they talk to him from the tree line at night, and try to get him to leave his home. I eagerly try to change the subject. Guy looks down and just keeps talking. He's pale as a sheet, and was obviously genuinely terrified. He even kind of looks like he's welling up. Tells me I'm the only person he's told. Knowing I'm a stranger, he apologizes, says he's scared and doesn't know what to do anymore. I try my best to awkwardly console this stranger, and the guy actually kind of starts to break down. I think he needs help. But not my place to give it to him. Regrettingly ask him why he's afraid. Says the faces don't work anymore, and 2 weeks ago he had seen something terrible in his living room. Huh. He walks over to the tarp sculpture and pulls the tarp off, to reveal the most mangled, terrible thing I have ever seen. It hardly resembled a human being. It was terrifying to have imagined this guy seeing it standing in his living room. Shortly after, a loud bang on the wall to my right. I nearly jumped out of my skin. This guy didn't even flinch. Then again, bang, then it just continued on and on, continuously, like hail hitting a tin roof. Guy screams, "Stop it!" And it ceases. After that I grabbed my shit, tell the guy I'm sorry, and got out of there as quickly as possible. As I'm leaving his home and driveway, I look into the rear view mirror. The tree line is darker than I've ever seen. Guy calls a week later and apologizes, says he was silly and everything is okay now. Friend says Guy quit, never hear from him again.